they've had a lot of sex in the movie, and I felt that that was illustrated, I think, pretty well. And what happened in the jungle is something much, I mean, much deeper and much more of a connection between the two of them.
Is all we are.
Beyond the source text and its writer, did any famously charismatic queer historical figures help inspire the character of Lee?
When I rehearse my lines, I always don't use the text because I'm learning an accent. I don't want to use the text because you overuse it and you kind of, it can get tired, and so I just pick anything else. So I was using Tennessee Williams's autobiography, which is, if you haven't read it, I would highly recommend because it's brilliant and funny and all of those things. So I just would read passages of it. So although that's the wrong accent, there's a brilliant lyrical kind of fun to it that I thought was quite, useful.
Have you noticed any difference in how people, the mainstream press, for example, ask about gay sex scenes as opposed to straight ones, as in with more or less delicacy, with more or less respect, with more or less fascination, or in 2024, is it just the same?
I think it's, Jean Moreau once said, when I learned that the majority is wrong, I stay with the minority. And for me, it's a question of the minority that I am applying to is the intellectual minority, meaning someone who has thoughtfulness. So we should be welcoming the mediocrity of the majority as a fact of life.
Anything to add?
I mean, I can't. I mean, where am I going to go from there? I'm going to quote John Moreau. It's like, I think. No, I mean, it's interesting. I mean, I get asked at why I'm, this risk I'm taking. I don't see it in those terms. I mean, I don't think there's a risk in making a movie. There's a risk in sort of hoping people will like it and all of these things. But I don't see the risk in,
I don't think there is. We shouldn't cry at the wolf of homophobia or of that kind of stuff as a fact that we should feel menaced by, but we should be objectively looking at it and see that there is an acting out of homophobia, that it's somehow internalized or externalized. It's factual.
The sex scene in the jungle really blew my mind, and it reminded me in its boldness of the peach-eating scene in Call Me By Your Name. I wondered, as it's quite abstract in nature, was approaching it quite liberating?
I mean, I have to say, I never really thought they were having sex.
Same. Me too.
I mean, I thought that was kind of in fact, they've had a lot of sex in the movie, and I felt that that was illustrated, I think, pretty well. And what happened in the jungle is something much, I mean, much deeper and much more of a connection between the two of them, which is way beyond the sort of physical act of fucking. It's like, they, yeah, I mean, it's if it felt like that, great, but it's and that's how you interpreted it. I'm happy for you to say it like that, but I think it's something. It's that moment when you feel, and if you're lucky enough to have had that feeling when you've truly felt like you've touched somebody and been touched by someone really, really, really deep inside.
Yeah. Oh yeah, and I totally got that it was metaphorical, but I love this new insight into it. I find the word queer very powerful, and so too the letter Q for questioning, because queer is a reclaimed term that could unite my community. However, I respect that some, especially older gay guys, don't like the term. They feel it's a slur, and other members of my community reject labels altogether. Are you excited to be restarting a cultural conversation about the word's legacy and its future? And have you had any of your own artistic conversations about its meaning?
Well, there is an historical context to the usage of the word in relationship with the novel. It's been written in 1951, so the title was that since more than 70 years now. So we cannot ignore that that's the fact, like updating it would have been quite how can I say, petty. But I think for Burroughs, queer was a polyphonic word. I don't think he was only using it as a slur. In fact, the Italian translation of the title in the second edition of the book in the mid-2000 was quite misguided because it was translated into checca, which is would be like faggot or something like that. I don't think that's what Burroughs had in mind. I think Burroughs had in mind the idea of a sort of off the center of things, someone that doesn't want to be neither included not feel excluded, but I would say more forcluded. So that is what queer means to me. So anything can be queer if in that does not adhere to the conventional cultural way in which we shape our lives.
Yeah, of course, is a sensibility as much as it might be about someone's sexuality.
I don't think it's about sexuality at all. I think if you see Oh My Darling Clementine, John Ford masterpiece, that is a very queer movie, but it's not literally queer. It's not about queer people, queer themes, queer whatever. It's like the way in which this amazing master has put his idea of history in perspective, the West, and the shape of it. It's very different in a way that is relentlessly such.
Be that as it may, I think some hateful people out there will take the queerness in it very literally.
They should ask themselves why they are so hateful toward the LGBTQI plus community and identity.
Yeah.
And I would put a mirror in front of them.
I've noticed genuinely through my job a real uptick in anti-LGBTQ sentiment online, and lately homophobic too. And I wondered if, anybody can be targeted with that kind of negativity. Have either of you guys personally encountered it, having taken on this project?
I'm not online, so I don't. I mean, probably, but I don't. I mean, I can't do anything about it. There's nothing to be done about it except ignore it,
or do a movie like this,
or do a movie like this, and try and push this art form as to the places that it should go, and to hopefully to the discussions that should be going. It may bring up negativity, but I know it's going to bring up a huge amount of positive things as well.
I love the concept of unsynchronized love as opposed to unrequited love. Could you elaborate on what you meant by that when you used that term in an interview recently?
Well, I stole it from Luca,
Oh.
but I think that you have two people. It's not a one-way street. I mean, as Luca very poignantly and very hilariously put the other day, unrequited love is just stalking. And these people love each other. They just love each other in very different ways. And I see them as sort of vibrating at different frequencies. And at a certain point, and the moment you said in the jungle, they actually become together. It's like kind of the dials are brought together and then they go apart again. So there's no, it's not like Allerton has love just as deep for Lee as Lee does for Allerton. They're just very different human beings.
Do you think maybe you'd have had more luck with Omar Apollo's character?
No. I mean, the beautiful Omar Apollo who came and did this it's such a thing. But that scene is primarily about loneliness, and for both characters, Omar's part and my part, it's a very sad moment that in the movie for me. Because it's someone looking for something and not finding it.
Was it exciting, well not exciting, but just a satisfying opportunity to explore both vulnerability and masculinity in the same film?
Well, I'm always interested in that. I've always been interested in that because I think masculinity is very often just a suit of armor that people put up for whatever reasons to hide something, and it may be it's glorious. I mean, it's not all negative. Some of it is absolutely glorious, and I think in this movie is to be celebrated, the masculinity in this movie. But I'm very interested to know what it's hiding, why it's there, what it's protecting, and why somebody is going through life behaving a certain way. I mean, Lee walks around town with a gun on his hip and like a cowboy. I mean, he couldn't be more masculine if he tried it, but he's also inside a teenage boy falling in love for the first time.